Well, meantime, President Biden visiting Iowa today, announcing he is suspending a federal rule and allowing year-round sales of higher ethanol blend gas, also known as E15. It's another step to try and lower gas prices nationwide, with the Biden administration emphasizing drivers will save an average of about 10 cents a gallon. And his latest announcement reflecting the many ways the president is trying to ease the pressures of inflation, which has hit its highest level in 40 years. Americans see this as a threat. So what is it going to take to get it under control? Our D.C. insider, NewsNation D.C. Bureau Chief Mike Viqueira joining us live now. So, Vic, this was Biden's first time back in Iowa since he was campaigning for president.
Right. Well, that's absolutely right. And Iowa is significant in so many ways. Of course, you mentioned the first in the nation caucuses. But if there's one phrase that you mentioned, Nichole, that strikes fear in the hearts of Democrats, it's highest inflation rate in 40 years, since the end of the Carter administration, the beginning of the Reagan administration. And Jimmy Carter is not exactly, his political fate is not exactly an omen that Democrats are going to welcome right now. The president, Democrats are trying to fight back, putting a positive spin, accentuating the positives in the economy. They're talking about a 3.5% GDP, gross domestic product. Growth rate. They're talking about almost record low unemployment, that just over 3% now. And the fact that the president, in his administration, 6.6 million jobs have been created. But when you're talking about life's essentials that are driving this 8.5% inflation rate, gas, housing, and food, something that takes a bite out of every family budget, well, that spells political trouble. You're right. The president was in Iowa today to try to take care of some political matters as well as some energy matters. And I'm joined now by Emily Brooks. She covers Republicans for The Hill. She joins us now in our beautiful rooftop studio. Thanks for being with us, Emily.
Thank you.
So you cover Republicans, so naturally I want to ask you about Democrats. The president was in Iowa today, but he was on a mission that was about more than just gas prices, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, Democrats are trying to hold on to the House of Representatives, but it's not looking too great for them. And one of the Democrats in Iowa who is vulnerable and at risk is Cindy Axne. And that is someone that President Biden, by going to Iowa, by talking about what he's doing with this ethanol rule and change could potentially help her, because that's very important to Iowa voters. And she is in a district that went 3% for President Trump. And so she is very vulnerable here, since the political winds seem to be pushing far further than 3% towards the Republican side.
Yeah, and I thought it was so interesting on this trip. You know, I covered the first Obama term, and whenever we traveled away from Washington, it was to a swing district. You know, we went to Allentown, Pennsylvania. We went to Lorain, Ohio. The president going to this district, and you mentioned Cynthia Axne, she's the last Democrat standing in the Iowa delegation. Not too long ago, there were 2 Democratic senators from Iowa, but pictures galore of President Biden on the tarmac, touring a farm facility. You mentioned that corn is the basis for ethanol, and corn and ethanol are very popular in Iowa. But I want to talk about the economy and Republicans, your area of expertise, and where they see the best strategy for attacking Democrats as we head into this election year. Mitch McConnell seems to just want to sit back and let Democrats implode. But the man running Senate campaigns for Republicans, Rick Scott, has another idea.
Absolutely. Rick Scott released a plan, a bulleted plan, 11-point plan, many more, to try and save America, is what he called it. And one of those things that he mentioned was a plan to have every American pay at least some tax. And that would mean the 50% of Americans who don't make enough
Lower income Americans,
fixed income Americans who don't pay federal income taxes would pay some. Naturally, this is exactly the kind of thing that Mitch McConnell does not want, because it turned into a attack line immediately for Democrats. And interestingly, though, Mitch McConnell is taking a very different track than House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who is working on some kind of Contract with America-inspired plan.
Like Newt Gingrich back in '94.
Newt Gingrich consulted with him on this
I didn't know that.
So they're currently working on something. So different tacts there, but also very different political maps. I mean, it's a lot more subtle on statewide Senate races.
Right, and when you put for a proposal, you give Democrats something to fire at. You give them some traction, a little toehold as they try to climb towards re-election. Okay, so I want to talk about Republicans and what they think is a winner, aside from inflation. Obviously, What is the other big issue? You and I talked a little bit ago about the big issue that they think that they're going to hit on that's really going to get them political traction.
Right now, the very big issue they are harping on is the end of Title 42.
Title 42.
And that
We're hearing
is
a lot about that.
And that is the border policy implemented due to the coronavirus.
In the Trump administration.
In the Trump administration, and then extended twice in the Trump administration, several more times during the Biden administration, that allows Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security to turn away migrants from the border a lot more easily than they will be when this rule goes away at the end of May. And so Republicans and some more centrist, vulnerable, moderate Democrats are starting to say, hey, we need to think about keeping this in place, at least for now, because border encounters, if this goes away, are projected to be 18,000 a day, which is very record highs.
It's amazing. And you mentioned those moderate Democrats. And a border state, Mark Kelly, the Democratic senator from Arizona, wants to put a stop to this, as does Kyrsten Sinema, another Democratic senator from Arizona. But Kelly's the only one on the ballot in November. So I guess where you stand depends on where you sit, or vice versa. I can remember how that phrase goes.
Well, they both sit in Arizona.
That's right. All right, so finally, Kevin McCarthy. He's the Republican leader, the minority leader in the House right now. If everyone is right, and virtually everyone thinks that Republicans are going to take control of the House come November, and then when the new Congress convenes on January 6th of next year, January 3rd of next year, I should say, will Kevin McCarthy, where does it stand right now? You cover Republicans. What's the inside scoop? Will he be the next speaker if Republicans take control?
Well, look, there are some rabble-rousers in the Freedom Caucus, which helped push out the one of the last Republican speakers, John Boehner. There are a couple members there who are not very thrilled with the idea of Kevin McCarthy being speaker. A couple have said that they will not vote for him. But, you know, things have changed a lot since that last time that the Freedom Caucus helped push somebody out. The last person who was running against Kevin McCarthy to lead the House Republicans was Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, representative from Ohio, is now the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee. And he has put his full backing behind Kevin McCarthy.
Oh, he has.
So now there is no real alternative right now. That could change in the future. But McCarthy is certainly appeasing so far those more conservative members in the House who have given him grief in the past.
Okay, Emily, that's very interesting information. And Nichole, as we move closer to November, more and more momentum, it appears, for Republicans to take over the House, and the Senate is going to be razor tight. Nichole?
Yeah, we are getting closer to November. All right, Vic, thank you for that. Well, as we mentioned at the top of this, inflation remains a threat for Americans, with costs of food, gas, housing, and other necessities really squeezing consumers and wiping out those pay raises. Economists pointing out, despite overcoming the depths of the pandemic, the bottom line is consumers are just still struggling. So what will it take to get rid of the sticker shock? Joining us now, Tobias Burns from our partners at The Hill. Tobias, thank you so much for being with us. So we're talking about, rising food, gas, housing costs. What is it going to take, or what is really fueling this spike of inflation?
Well, it's three main things. There's sort of three causes stacked on top of each other. The first one is the fundamental supply chain disruptions that we saw as a result of the pandemic. These are just the basic mechanical and logistical snags that hit the economy as various sectors of the global economy shut down following the initial onset of COVID-19. Then here in the U.S., there's been a lot of criticism about the fiscal and budgetary response to those supply chain disruptions. Mostly in the form of the stimulus that came out, both under the Trump and the Biden administrations. This put a lot more money back into the economy and ultimately drove up prices. And then on top of that, the most timely inflation cause is the geopolitical situation now we have with Ukraine, where there's a war going on. Russia has invaded, and it looks to be somewhat protracted. This has driven up oil prices, gas prices, energy prices in general, which are a key driver of inflation. And the U.S. response to that with sanctions and the Western response in general has been to isolate Russia, which further creates uncertainty and raises the general price.
All right, so Tobias, you mentioned those stimulus payments just now. We know, obviously, President Biden announcing today that, ethanol blend gas more will be available all year. But is there really anything the Biden administration or even Congress can do to combat inflation in both the short term and the long term?
Well, there are quick little industry fixes, if you want to call them that, the executive branch and the legislative branch can enact. We saw today the ethanol proposal by the Biden administration. We've also seen some talk on Capitol Hill in the past of a gas tax holiday, which would comparably lower the price. We also, at one point, this is no longer on the table, but there was some legislative ideas running around about even distributing gas cards to consumers. Again, that's no longer on the table. But those are very industry specific, and inflation is fundamentally not a fiscal phenomenon. It's a monetary phenomenon. And that's what the Federal Reserve Bank does. So what we could see both in May and June are 50 basis point interest rate hikes. The thinking there being that you make borrowing money more expensive, you increase the value of the dollar, and you ultimately make the dollar more powerful to purchase goods.
And then hopefully they'll in turn not hurt Americans further. All right, Tobias Burns, thank you so much. We appreciate talking to you today. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.